Hello and welcome to another episode of TrekHammer, and today, instead of reviewing a Star Trek episode, I'm going to talk about the comments I received on my previous review of the musical Strange New Worlds episode, Subspace Rhapsody. A lot of you agreed with me. A lot of you disagreed with me, and most of you were perfectly civil, and that's exactly what I want to see, because I have my likes and dislikes with Star Trek, you guys have your likes and dislikes, and as long as that we're civil with each other, I think that's perfectly fine. I think we're all doing perfectly fine with that. But some of you didn't, and I'm not trying to accuse anyone. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. This isn't a call out. I just want to have a conversation about some of the things that were said. So I've got all of the comments on my tablet here, and we're going to go through all of them. Yes, I'm using a tablet Star Trek style. Let's do this. So, the first one I've got, these are in no particular order, they're literally just in the order of whatever came in on my emails, because every time there's comments left I get an email apparently. I should turn that off, it's getting very silly. So the first one is, that episode was extremely cringe-inducing. It was like watching my parents make out with their parents. By far one of the worst Star Trek episodes ever. Okay, thanks for that image, that's lovely, thank you very much. Yeah, extremely cringe-inducing. I wouldn't have gone that far. I get what they were trying to do. I just don't think it worked. I wouldn't have said it was cringe-inducing. But if that's what happened, I'm sorry for your experience there, because that can't have been a nice experience. But we didn't need that kind of visual, because thanks, I've got to wash my brain with bleach now because of that image. Lovely. That's just wonderful. Next up we have, all you have to do is ask yourself, what would Leonard Nimoy have thought? Leonard Nimoy, how can I put this nicely? Made a song about Bilbo Baggins that we have not let him live down ever since. So, yeah, I'm not entirely certain that Leonard is the right guy for musicals, considering that he did do basically a concept album about the Lord of the Rings. So there's that. Neither the half-animated episode, which is just an hour-long commercial for Lower Decks, nor this one encapsulates anything close to the tone or intent of the Star Trek anthology. Simply lowest denominator consumerism. I'm going to disagree there. I think both episodes tried something and it didn't exactly succeed, but they tried something, and in the spirit of experimentation to see what works, that's perfectly fine in my view. That's perfectly fine. So, I don't think the Lower Decks one was an hour-long advert for Lower Decks. I think they were trying to do a standard time travel thing, but the characters from Lower Decks don't work in Strange New Worlds, because Lower Decks is a fast-paced comedy, almost a parody of some of the sillier parts of Star Trek, and trying to bring that into Strange New Worlds didn't work. It's nice that they tried. Perhaps the Strange New Worlds cast going to the Lower Decks might have worked better, because a straight man coming into comedy is usually quite funny, and in a comedy setting that would have a lot of mileage. I just don't think it worked this way. I don't think it's lowest common denominator consumerism. I really think they tried something and it didn't work, but fair play to them for trying. My good friend Professor Brainy Specs says, my question is, why try to do an episode like this? It doesn't fit in Star Trek. It's like they're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. To a certain extent, that is exactly what they were doing. This entire season has really been experimentation. What if Spock experimented with his humanity? What if we brought in the Lower Decks characters into the real world? What if we did a musical? Yeah, there's a lot of that. The entire season has been about experimentation and exploring. Well, say that. Not all of it, let's put it that way. What if we did the Next Generation courtroom drama? What if we did the Deep Space Nine Horrors of War? Yeah, some of it, I think, worked better than others. The Horrors of War episode, whoa, that was damn good. But yeah. some of what he says, yeah, I agree. Where he's talking about Spock having to relearn how to be Vulcan, despite the fact that he grew up on Vulcan and knows all of Vulcan customs. I can to some extent see why they did it that way, because when something is overwhelming you, as emotion would be, or a complete change in your outlook because suddenly you're human, that kind of thing, I can see how that would require someone to go, remember how you're supposed to act, blah, 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 blah. Or certain things are just taken for granted. But yes, Spock has already had to go through learning how to pass as Vulcan, and that was kind of the point of several episodes, especially if we go back to the animated series where we see the young Spock and he's trying his best to learn how to be Vulcan. It does feel like it should have been something that he already knew because he's doing it himself to a certain extent. So I see where you're coming from. Indie Tiger's Sci-Fi Review. This is the first time we get a decent look at engineering, and I have to say it fits the theme of the episode in that it looks like a fantasy version of the real thing from TOS. Yeah, that's a weird thing, isn't it, when you think about it? It's the first time we've properly seen engineering. We got a real good look at it. And I liked the look of it. I'm trying to picture it in my head. I liked the look of it. It's an interesting look. It seems pretty damn good. It's a big, bulky space. It's not quite as bad as the Kelvin Universe one, which is just a brewery. Literally, it's just a brewery. They filmed, I think it was a Budweiser brewery. They filmed in there. And it's, no. That's not what it is. So, but this one was more in keeping with the original series, albeit with a lot of shine. So I don't mind it, but it seems a little bit too big and too open and too empty for my liking, because I remember the classic series, engineering was quite a cramped space. It was more like a submarine than a cruise liner, you know what I mean? So there is a bit of that. Despite the Klingons, there was no real threat here. In fact, they really nerfed the Klingons. I may never be able to look at a Klingon in the eye again without laughing. Yeah, that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Oh my goodness. The Klingons. I should have mentioned that in the review. The Klingons, all the way through, we don't get to hear what the Klingons are doing. We see, at one point, a very brief snippet from the Klingons where they say that this event has caused lose honor, but we don't see what they're singing. We've seen Klingons singing in the past. We have seen all kinds of Klingons singing in the past. I'm not going to sing it myself, but we hear the Klingon funerary songs, we hear the Klingon opera, we hear all kinds of things from Klingons. Klingons have a real love of Klingon opera, and it's really good. So I was hoping we will get to see some of that. I really, really was. That would have been enough to raise the rating for me on the episode, to hear Klingon opera again. And what we got was generic, bubbly pop music. It was like, oh my goodness, why did you do this? You built them up and built them up, and right at the end we get a brief flash, and it's like, so flashy lights, and it's a pop number, and they're dancing. It was a good joke, I'll grant them that, but it wasn't what I wanted. It really wasn't. I wanted Klingon opera, man. Oh, so yeah, I understand what you're saying. Oh, finally they commit the worst sin in music for me. The repeated phrase where they sing the line and then immediately sing that same line again. Yes. I get why they do it in musicals. I have to admit, I'm a fan of musicals. I adore Phantom of the Opera. Jesus Christ Superstar is a great musical experience. If you ever get the chance, go and see it. It's really, really good. And Les Miserables, wonderful. Absolutely adore it. So I do like musicals. West Side Story, actually. It's an American musical. West Side Story, fantastic. Absolutely love it. But all of them have a bit where either Andrew Lloyd Webber has this thing where he has characters sing or talk over each other so that you can't understand what they're saying. Some other modern musicals have the thing where they repeat the line, and it really just annoys, because repetition is not useful. So I understand where you're coming from. Even people who liked it had some issues. Now we got another one here. This episode was pretty great, I think, and far better than those old scientists. That one was an overhyped load of meh. That is a big issue, and it's one that a lot of people have, regardless of whether they liked the show or not. Hype really is the worst thing you can have in this kind of thing. We build things up so much, and then even if it's great, it's going to be a disappointment because it's not as good as what we had in our head. The thing that you have in your head is something great. It's perfectly tailored for you. And you will never get that unless you make it yourself and control every single aspect. So yeah, I understand the problem with hype. The songs were decent, which almost made up for the plot machinations. Yeah, that's the thing, it's a musical. I went into it understanding that the plot was going to be a bit silly to justify the musical, but it still didn't work for me. I'm sorry. I really enjoyed it more than expected. Well, I'm really glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because that's kind of the point. If you didn't like it, then that's the problem, isn't it? That's why I had issues. I wanted to like it, and I just didn't. That's the problem. Yep, they managed to beat Spock's brain with flying colours. This is the first Trek episode I watched by skipping through the scenes ever. It's not the first one I've watched by skipping through the scenes. Someone pointed out that I'd said this was the worst ever, and by saying that, I kind of said that the racist episodes weren't the worst. I forgot about the racist episodes. I put them out of my mind so much that I forgot they existed. Sorry. So yeah, it's not the worst episode, the racist ones are. Couldn't agree more with your analysis, although Those Old Scientists is a very close second when it comes to worst episodes. Fair enough. This is the thing. If you want to agree or disagree, I am perfectly fine with that. I am not the kind of person who thinks, well, my opinion is X and therefore everyone must agree or they're wrong. I'm happy to have people disagree, but I'm hoping that you'll understand why I think the way I did. That's the kind of the point. If I'm not explaining myself well enough, then I kind of failed as a critic. That's the problem. So I'm glad that you agree with the analysis, because that means that you actually watched it and I got across my point, which is what I was going for. I think the term is jumping the shark. No, I'm not going to go that far. A shark jumping moment is where a show goes irredeemably bad. And I can't think of a single Star Trek show that has actually jumped the shark. I think a few have got close. Threshold was bad in that respect when it did the Warp 10 barrier. I think, where'd you go from there? You literally cannot go faster than being at every point in space at once. And yet they did. So that was kind of bad. But for the most part, I think no show's jumped the shark yet. There's always a chance. George Pearson, and I am going to call your name out. Why am I seeing a female and hearing a guy's voice? I don't know. Consult your doctor. This episode was brilliant. Star Trek is on fire right now this season. Every episode has been great. People need to grow up. Your daddy's Star Trek is gone. We live in a changing world. Come on, people. No. I did grow up. And I put across why I didn't think this episode worked. There's no issue with that. As for your daddy's Star Trek is gone, Star Trek is old enough to be my granddad's Star Trek. Not my dad's. My dad was a child when Star Trek came out. Well, was he? Yes. Yes, he would have still been a child when this came out. So it would have been tailored for my granddad's era. So yeah, you got the times wrong there. I'm not as old as you think I am. We live in a changing world. Yes, we do, but it doesn't mean that we have to lose the past. Or that we have to like everything that comes out. I was not able to watch the entire episode. If I wanted to watch a Disney movie, I would do so. I can't really disagree with this, because I've said in various videos over the years that the idea that, oh, it gets good by X, Y, and Z is a bad argument. If you don't like something, then you should feel free to not watch it. So, yeah, I'm sorry that you couldn't get through it, though. What we got next? I loved this episode and can't really understand why some don't. In that case, I didn't put across my reasons very well then, and I'm sorry that happened for you. My reason is that I don't think the musical worked in terms of how it was presented, how the songs were written, how they fit the characters or didn't fit the characters, in fact, and things like that. So I don't think every single character should have had the same style of song. It felt like it hadn't been refined enough, like they hadn't had time to refine things properly. And that was a big issue for me. Spock, being Vulcan, should have had a different style of song to Number One being Illyrian, or Captain Pike being human, things like that, because they would have had different cultures. I know that Number One, Una, she hides her culture, but at the same time, she is still from that culture, grew up in it and all of that. She would have a different style of music. That's how I see it. And I keep coming back to the Buffy episode, where Buffy has a cheery sing-along style with standard musical styles, a bit like West Side Story style, that really underlines that kind of hides, but at the same time emphasizes the darkness in her and her depression and all of that. Spike has hard rock. Spike is a rock song singer. And then you have some of the others where they've got these ballads that work for them because it's all about soulful, oh, I'm conflicted, I have problems, and they're eating me inside, so they have a ballad. All of that worked because every style of song fit the character and what they were going through. In Star Trek, we didn't have that. They were all the same kind of song. And that really didn't work for me. And that's one of the major reasons why I didn't like it. I will, however, grant what one person said, and hopefully it'll come up in this list, where they said that Spock's I'm the X song was cleverly written. I agree. The lyrics were very, very well done for that song, but it was still the same kind of song as the others, so it felt like everyone was singing with one voice, and I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. Not for me, anyway. That's why I didn't like it. Oh, it is this guy. It's the same guy that I'd be talking to. Yeah, so he says, my degree is in theatre and I've done a lot of musical theatre in my life, and these songs fit right in with how musical theatre is organised. Yes, they do. And that was my problem as well. It felt like a standard off-Broadway musical, but this is not an off-Broadway musical. This is Star Trek. There are aliens in Star Trek, and that's kind of the main issue I have, which is why I'm saying they should have all had different voices. Like the Klingons. We expected Klingon opera. I have not met a person, whether they liked it or didn't like it, who wasn't expecting Klingon opera when the Klingons arrived. And yes, I get why that's the joke, because we're expecting X and they gave us Y. That's fine. That's a good joke. Very funny. Ha ha ha. But we were expecting Klingon opera and we didn't get it. And that's kind of the issue, isn't it? When your expectations are diverted that much, there's got to be a damn good reason for it. He came back after we had a discussion, and then I stopped at one point because I think neither of us was going to see the other person's point. And the last thing I want is to just end up in a slinging match or an argument or something like that in the comments. There was no point to that. Everyone comes away worse for it. So I stopped responding. But he has some good points there. I think he's totally misunderstood the whole episode. The lighting doesn't change because within the framework of the show, the characters know they're acting oddly and singing. But that's not entirely true. There is a part where the lighting does change. And I should have highlighted this in the episode, in the video, and I'm sorry that I didn't, because it kind of undermined my own argument. The Klingons have different lighting. The lighting changes for the Klingon song, which shows that it could have changed. Lighting, my biggest issue that I kept highlighting was the songs all look the same, they're all filmed in the same style, they're all presented in the same style. So there's no lighting changes, there's no camera angle changes. Where, coming back to Buffy again, there is a bit in Buffy where you see the camera starts to tilt, you get overhead shots, and it looks like a rock video. Coming back to Spike's song, Let Me Rest in Peace. He lays down on top of a tomb and crosses his arms over his chest, saying, let me rest in peace. They go outside, all of a sudden there's a funeral happening at night, which wouldn't happen, but it works for the song. He leaps up onto the coffin and looks like he's surfing it, and then rolls off and continues his song. All that kind of stuff fit with a rock music video. Later on in the episode, where the demon guy, who I wish I could remember the name of, he does have a name. It's Mr. Something. I think Mr. Smooth or something like that. I don't know. He comes along, he dances, and then his face and upper shoulders are imposed over the top of what we're seeing from other characters as he's influencing them. Again, very much in the style of older music videos, which worked really well because he's the puppet master controlling everything. I wasn't expecting that kind of level of change for Star Trek, but here's the thing. The characters may know they're in the musical, and the entire thing runs on the rules of musicals. They say as much in the show and then use the rules of musical to help enhance the beam that they're firing to try and close the rift. They use the rules of the musical to create a finale to focus the beam and win. They know there are rules, they're following the rules. The argument that we had here was that the rules of the musical don't affect the real world, and hence the camera doesn't change. But the rules are used to affect the real world in the show. Moreover, at one point, a character turns off gravity so that two of the singing characters can float and spin around each other and then come gently back down at the end of the song. The rules of the universe are used to enhance what's going on in the song. That was my point. If they can do it for that one scene, they could have had the lights change, they could have had the camera angles change. It wouldn't have even mattered that the cameras were changing from the point of view of the rules of the universe. That's our rules as the observer. We could have had it look like a music video, we could have had it look like a musical, we could have had something other than straight camera work for a standard Star Trek episode. That's what I was trying to get at, and it's little things like that, stuff that should have been happening because it's a musical that didn't happen, and as a result the entire thing falls flat. That's what I was trying to get across, and I'm sorry if that didn't come across, because as I said before, if I can't get my point across, then it's not working as a critique, and I do apologise for that. Chris Dawson says, I won't disagree what you found wrong with it, but I loved this episode. In that case, that's great. If you loved it, that's fine. I happen to not like it, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't like it. You know what I mean? I've been saying this all the time. We can have disagreements, and we can all be Star Trek fans. So I'm glad you liked it. It was simply fun to watch and see our characters theatrically in something so different. Fair enough, and that's fine. If you enjoyed it, that's perfectly fine. James says, sorry I loved it. Don't apologise for liking something. It was my fave. Worst ever, not even close. I actually enjoyed it. It was silly, yes, but fun. Fair enough, like I say, that's perfectly fine. Totally loved it. Excellent, I'm glad you did. It was a great episode, I loved it. There may be some downs, but minimal. You're too critical. Yeah, but that's my job. It's my job to be critical. The important thing was if you were entertained and would want to watch it again. I do. And there is the big issue. I don't want to watch it again because I wasn't entertained. I spent the entire episode going, this just isn't working for me. And that was the problem. I watched it all the way through hoping that maybe I'll get into it. It never happened. So yeah, unfortunately it didn't work for me. What kind of soulless ghoul wouldn't like this episode? Good Lord, please get other hobbies. And this, I wanted to highlight. This comment is the reason I wanted to do this response video. Because that's not what this channel's about. I am a Star Trek fan, have been since childhood. Grew up on Next Generation and repeats of the original series. Absolutely loved all of them. Deep Space Nine, my favourite of all of them. Wonderful show. But I can like and not like things without having to call people soulless ghouls. I think we deserve, as people, never mind just as Star Trek fans, but as people, we deserve a better level of discourse. And that's what I want to try and put across on this show. So, no, let's leave out the name calling. Let's agree that we can disagree on things without having to say the other person is bad or wrong or soulless or anything like that. We don't need to resort to name calling and othering. We're all people. we're all Star Trek fans. Let's try and keep it positive. One of the all-time bests. Sorry, but you're totally wrong. But I'm not. I've just got a different opinion. And that's fine. You can have a different opinion to me and not be wrong, because you can't bring an objective statement to a subjective material. Right and wrong don't fit with critiques and enjoyment of a show. There isn't one right way or wrong way to do it. We can all have different opinions. 100% wrong, you're not a Trekkie. I'm not a Trekkie. I have Star Trek memorabilia. I made Star Trek anime. That's why I've got this in the background, because I knew this one was coming up. I make Star Trek cartoons. I partake in a Star Trek quiz every week. I run a Star Trek role-playing game every week. I have a huge amount of Star Trek episodes on DVD, Blu-ray and video. I go back to VHS era. I've been watching Star Trek since childhood. I bought the Star Trek fact files. I have the Star Trek figures. I even have a communicator and a tricorder. I will get them for you now. I have a Captain Kirk uniform in my wardrobe, and I have a science uniform from the Kelvin universe as well. I am a Star Trek fan. So, someone saying, you're not a Trekkie, is wrong. Just because I don't like an episode does not mean I am no longer a Star Trek fan, or that I was never a Star Trek fan. I am a Star Trek fan. I just happen to not like this episode. You can not like episodes and still be a Star Trek fan. If you like Star Trek, you're a Trekkie. That's how it works. We do not say people can't be in this. We don't gatekeep. That is not our way. Live long and prosper. Alright, we'll do one more. This episode was good. And yes, some songs were low grade, but they, to me, hit the point. Then yeah, good. You liked it? Excellent. That's great. That's exactly what we want. Uhura agreed needed more sensual to fit her. This pre-original character has not truest found her voice. That's actually a good point. That is a really interesting point. Because in my video, I described Uhura's songs as generic dad rock because they didn't fit the soulful, sensual style that we see her have in the original series. But the original series is like 6 or 7 years away from where she is now. So this guy, William, he brings up an interesting point. The Uhura that's in the show is not the Uhura that we see in the original series. She hasn't got to that point yet. So perhaps I was a bit too quick to judge that because she hasn't grown and found her own voice. That is a fair comment. And again, that's why I like this. That's why I like having the conversation. We're not name calling, we're having a discussion, and that is great. We can both see interesting points. So yeah, thank you for that, because that is exactly what I want to get out of this. So you see, this has been a bit of a long one, but my point was to try and continue the conversation and see that we aren't on different sides here. We're all Star Trek fans, and we all like it for different reasons, and we like different things and different aspects. That's perfectly fine. But we can all still have a conversation, and as a result, we can see different points of view. And that's exactly what I want from this. So yeah. I'm not going to say that my opinion is correct and all of you are wrong. I'm not going to say that your opinion is correct and I'm wrong. We all have different reasons for different viewpoints. And I think we can all grow from that and have nice conversations. And that's exactly what I want to see. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that I've put across my point a bit better now, and that those of you who didn't agree at least see why I think the way that I do about this particular episode. The next video will be back to Strange New Worlds, and then we'll be doing the Star Trek original series continue for that. I've got a couple of episodes that are still in the bag for that one, so look forward to that. But until next time, I've been Zoe Kirk Robinson, you've been watching TrekHammer. Take care, have a great day, live long and prosper. If you like the show, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help create future videos. That's patreon.com/Zoe Kirk Robinson. And I've got an extra special thanks going out to Chief89, Sam Yates, Retro Mickey 82, Mo Henry, and George Bortorini. Thank you so much, guys.